Hi everybody and welcome back to the FPL Family YouTube channel. My name's Sam and today we're going to continue our deep dive series, this time looking at Burnley assets and whether we should look to turf more in order to invest for our 2021-22 season. For me, Burnley were one of the disappointments of the 2021 season. There were missed opportunities from them a number of times. They had some real injury problems, they had some defensive woes, they had issues with players leaving the squad, and that meant a very, very disrupted season for Burnley, and they just never really got themselves going. And in seasons gone by, Burnley have always been a side that we have looked to from an FPL point of view. We have always kind of considered them to be really nice, cheap, particularly defensive assets. So the likes of Charlie Taylor, Ben Mee, Tarkowski, they have always offered some decent value for money at price points that you can happily bench if you don't want to play them for that particular week, but also have some potential upside in terms of attacking returns too. But we just didn't see that last season, and as a result of that, it's kind of put me off investing in the Burnley defence going into the 21-22 season. We'll talk about the defence in a little bit more detail later, but let's start by having a little look at some of the key stats for Burnley for last season. So the first one graph on here, which is kindly supplied once again by our friends at Fantasy Football Scout, who currently have 20% off their membership. If you aren't a member yet and you want to give it a go, there's a link in the description below. You can sign up, take 20% off. Guarantee you'll enjoy the members area, particularly when the new one launches, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, which looks phenomenal. And of course, for next season, you'll be able to check your overall rank, your live scores, your game week points, everything in one place on the FF Scout members area. So this first heat map then shows the goals that Burnley scored last season, just 33 of them, which is incredibly disappointing when you think about the types of play that they do have. Only Fulham and Sheffield United managed to score less goals this season than Burnley did. The other graph shows the attempts that Burnley had. The green ones are those on target. Again, just 384 attempts on goal for Burnley this season. Only Crystal Palace, West Brom and Sheffield United had less. So again, right down there at the bottom in terms of ability to score goals, simply because they just were not creating the opportunities to do so. There was a real lack of creativity from Burnley last season, which resulted in some kind of disappointing returns from key assets. When we have a look then at the goals that they did see, of course we see Chris Wood sat there at the top, and he's taken a price rise for next season's game, something that I'm not sure is really worthy of, but we can talk about that a bit later on. So he managed 12 goals over the course of last season from his 33 appearances that he made in the Premier League. But when you compare that to some of the other players that are going to be priced around the same price as him this season, so in the 7.5 million forward bracket, we had a number of them who looked to offer much more value for money. So Ian Nacho at Leicester, for example, played only 25 games but scored 12 goals, the same as Chris Wood, but in far less game time. Ollie Watkins, slightly more games in terms of his ability to start at Aston Villa, 37 for him this season, but he did manage more goals and substantially more assists than Chris Wood did this season. Ollie Watkins with the 14 goals this time compared to Chris Wood's 12. And then we have a look in up to Newcastle and look at Callum Wilson. Just 26 games started for him this season with 12 goals. And the same with Danny Ings down at Southampton. Again, 29 games started, but 12 goals. So we're looking at players in the same price point as Chris Wood, in sides that look to have more creativity, particularly in those midfield positions. And for me, Chris Wood just doesn't seem to be worth that £7 million price tag. There was also a lack of goals across the rest of the team. We can see there was substantially less from players like Vidra with 3, had Ashley Barnes again with 3. So we're not seeing consistency across the rest of the team, and that really hurt them last season, very much reliant on Chris Wood. When we then go and have a little look at the big chances that Burnley scored then, we can see Chris Wood sitting at the top with 26, but the rest of the side between them only managed 29 big chances. That is incredibly little over the course of the team, and for me it's something that's really off-putting when you're talking about spending 7 million on a forward player. You want to see creativity across the side, you want to see big chances being created, and of course being scored, and we just didn't see that from Burnley last season. Okay, let's have a little look at this Burnley side then. So we've got the official FPL site up here, and we can see the Burnley team sorted here by the points that they scored last season. So of course we see Nick Pope sat there at the top as the highest Burnley point scorer last season. Now for me, Nick Pope is a disappointment, not necessarily through any fault of his own, but because in seasons gone by we have become so accustomed to Pope keeping clean sheet after clean sheet, making save after save, racking up bonus points. We've seen Burnley been really, really solid defensively, even if they haven't had that much in the way of attack, and Turf Moor in particular was in seasons gone by a bit of a fortress. But during the 2021 season, we just didn't see that from Burnley. Only 11 clean sheets across this season, which was 13th best in the league, so distinctly below average there. They conceded 55 goals over the course of the campaign. Only 5 teams managed to concede less goals than they did. And as a result of that, when you're talking about a 5.5 million price tag for Nick Pope, I just cannot see that he is worth that investment. Particularly when, the other day we had a look at Aston Villa. Martinez priced at the same price this season, offered so much more in terms of clean sheets, but also in terms of save points and bonus points last season. His additional extras added up massively. And so for me, if you're going to spend 5.5, you've already got a really decent option with Martinez, and I can't see that you're going to go with Pope. Particularly as, we've said before, there's a lot of good 4.5 million goalkeeper options this year, none less than Gaeta at Palace, Sanchez at Brighton. So many decent options in a cheaper price point to Nick Pope that for me, the way that they were last season means I'm not going to be looking to invest in that Burnley keeper slot. The defence is maybe a slightly different question. Tarkowski was good last season. In terms of aerial duels, he was in the top 5 in total with 153 across the season. Chris Wood actually notably was also in there with 165. Tarkowski also was decent in terms of his defensive returns last year. 159 clearances for him, successful clearances, which made him top for Burnley players for successful clearances last season. 42 blocks. Again, only me was better than him across that Burnley side. And for clearances, blocks and interceptions, when you combine them, he was top with 245 in total. He was also top for tackles won with 90. 66 of them were successful, giving him a successful tackle rate of 73.3%. So Tarkowski did offer some good defensive returns. He also offered some decent looking underlying stats for going forward. However, the lack of clean sheets really hurts when it comes to investing. And given he's 5 million this year, there are substantially better options in that 4.5 to 5 million bracket than Tarkowski for me, unless Burnley can go back to the Burnley of old and start keeping those clean sheets regularly, and then he might offer good value for money. But until that happens, for me, he's not one I'd be looking to invest in. Neither are the rest of the Burnley side in total. Charlie Taylor is normally one that's highly owned, or Lawton, from a Burnley perspective early on in the season. But I just can't see that happening on the back of what we saw in the 2021 season. When we have a look then at the Burnley attackers, we can see, of course, it's Chris Wood that was the highest scoring Burnley attacker going forward last season. However, of course, he did play substantially more than Ashley Barnes, who was injured for a large percentage of the season. And indeed, when you look at the underlying stats, it was Barnes who had the best minutes per chance ratio across that Burnley side, averaging a chance every 35.2 minutes. But again, it's not really that impressive, and we're seeing a lot of substantially better numbers when we look at the forwards from other teams. When we have a little look at attempts on goal, we see Chris Wood starting at the top for Burnley with 70. Barnes was next with 38. Again, as I've already mentioned, 11 games less though than Wood this season. Then Vigil was third with 35 attempts. But that's not huge numbers for these attacking players. And with Vigil, we saw a lack of consistency in terms of starts. Certainly wasn't always staying on for the whole game. And Ashley Barnes' injury kept him out for a large chunk of last season. So if we can see more consistency across the Burnley starting 11, then maybe one of them might be worth looking at. But when you think about the price tag, it's probably going to be Chris Wood that you would want of those three. And for me, at 7 million, you're better looking across some of the other sides, looking maybe if you can afford slightly more, looking at Ollie Watkins or Danny Ings, maybe having a look at Iheanacho or Callum Wilson even. That 7 million price bracket, 7.5, there's a lot of really decent options in there, and you can drop down to the likes of Tony at Brentford, who Lee's already mentioned in one of these videos, who again looks to offer much more in the way of value for money and is 0.5 million cheaper than Chris Wood. For me, the lack of attempts on goal, the lack of average possession, which for Burnley was just 41.2% last season. They were the 5th worst for touches in the opponent's half and in the final third. They were slightly better for penalty area touches with 712, but again, that was still the 6th worst in the league. It was only Westwood who started every game for Burnley last season, and even then he only managed to register 3 goals and 4 assists. So we aren't seeing huge numbers for these Burnley players. So for me, as sad as it is, because Burnley used to be one of my go-tos in pre-season in terms of picking a defender especially, they're a team that I'm really not looking to invest in. Unless, when we see the start of the season, we start to see some more consistency and we start to see a return to the Burnley of old, and then they might be a team that I look to invest in a bit later on in the season, maybe on first wild card. If you aren't already one of our patrons, we're currently not charging during pre-season. If you want to come along, sign up, have a little look, see what it's all about. Our OHANA podcasts are going out a bit more regularly now. The Slack is obviously still live, and there's plenty of Euro action going on over there because lots and lots of our patrons are playing Euro Fantasy. So come along, have a look, sign up. If you don't like it, no obligation to stay for the season. You can cancel your membership prior to the first payment going out. If you're interested, have a look. It's patreon.com/FPL Family. I'll see you next time when we have a little look at Crystal Palace.